And now I do have to spare a word for some conservative internet personalities like Libs of TikTok and the organization Gays Against Groomers, who spread blatant fake news and misinformation in the aftermath of the Georgia shooting that I do feel the need to correct and call out. So after the tragic shooting in Georgia, a bunch of fake information started to spread online, suggesting that the shooter was trans. A clearly, in my view at least, clearly fake profile, social media profile with she, they pronouns and like pro Kamala and other things for the shooter was spread, and people didn't really bother to check if it was real before just spreading it. And then massive accounts put out statements attributing this act of violence to essentially LGBT people or trans people or to the pro LGBT agenda with no basis in reality for that claim. So one individual who has 2 million followers on X, formerly Twitter, posted a picture of the Georgia shooter, which shows him with somewhat long hair, and said, quote, "Every child killed in a mass shooting in the last 2 years was killed by a transgender shooter." Fact check. False. We'll get into that, but that's not true. Yet this person shared it to millions of people nonetheless. Similarly, Libs of TikTok shared the shooter's mugshot and a CNN screenshot that says the shooter, quote, "expressed frustration with the acceptance of transgender people," and then said, Libs of TikTok wrote, "It's time to have a national conversation about the modern LGBTQ movement radicalizing youth into becoming violent activists." Now, that language from the CNN article is kind of sloppy and unclear, but I wouldn't read it to think that this person was a trans activist who was mad about trans people not being accepted. If anything, I'd read that language. I'd be uncertain, so I wouldn't run with it, but I'd probably read it as, oh, they were upset that trans people weren't more accepted, which CNN has now clarified the article. Now the updated version makes it clear that this individual, the Georgia shooter, was actually expressing anti-trans animus online. But Libs of TikTok has left this post up and not issued any sort of correction. Gays Against Groomers' official Twitter account put out a statement making a similar claim that they've now deleted, but as far as I can tell, there was no follow-up correction or apology for spreading fake information. I really take strong issue with this, guys, because what you have here is right-wing accounts who seized on unverified, salacious information to attempt to attribute the actions of an individual to an entire movement they dislike, that they're working against. And it is sick, it's twisted, right? In the same way that if there was a shooter who, for example, committed an atrocity and was motivated by anti-LGBT animus, the woke people who would say, this is the fault of Libs of TikTok, I would disagree with them. Well, now we have Libs of TikTok doing the same thing in reverse, saying, this is a pro-trans shooter, we need to talk about the LGBT community being responsible for violence. You're literally doing the collective guilt woke thing in reverse. And it's deeply wrong. It would be wrong even if the information you were spreading was true. But when you're doing it and spreading false and fake information, that's exponentially more evil and irresponsible of a use of your platform, of millions of followers that literally politicians follow and promote, and conservative media just amplifies constantly. It's incredibly reckless and disappointing stuff. And especially then, mistakes do happen, but you should delete the post, correct it, apologize, and blast that announcement as far as you can see. To leave it up and just move on is really detestable. I mean, what on earth? More importantly, though, this is why in the aftermath of these kinds of incidents, people need to be careful. They need to not just run with narratives or seize on unverified facts. Wait, take a beat, and don't just look to exploit these tragedies to own the libs or own the white men or own the conservatives. It's always wrong, whether it's woke people doing it or right-wing Twitter accounts doing it. It's not a healthy or constructive approach to these issues in any way. It's making our nation worse, it's dividing us, and it's spreading and misinforming people. It's really disheartening and alarming stuff, in my view. And I want to take a second to push back on this narrative that I see a lot from right-wing people, that trans shooters are an epidemic and the trans cult is brainwashing people into violence. This isn't really true. This is not really based in reality. A Reuters fact check of this claim pointed out that transgender individuals represent less than 1% of perpetrators in all mass shootings over the past decade, and about 2% involved in school shootings specifically. Limiting the search to the past 2 years yields 1 in 20, or 5%, of mass school shootings involving a transgender suspect. And despite the wild claims that have been spread online, there is no evidence that the Georgia shooter identified as transgender. Now, depending which number you look at, those numbers for trans shooters are either representative of the population or maybe slightly overrepresented, but it is just not true that we have some epidemic of trans mass shooters or anything of the sort. And more importantly, I want to stress to people on the right that even if they were to find some sort of statistical correlation, which doesn't really appear they have yet, or that I don't really think they will, that trans people were overrepresented in school shooters, it would still be wrong to blame all trans people or the trans community for that, or to say it's inherent to being trans, in the same way that it's wrong to say that just because 97 or whatever percent of school shooters are men, that it's a men problem, or that all men are responsible. That would still be wrong. You're honestly doing the woke identity politics logic in reverse. So conservatives need to put down this stupid argument and stop. You can disagree with trans people. You can disagree with the trans activist movement. I do it all the time without essentially blood libeling them or attributing responsibility to violence to individuals who had nothing to do with it. That is really, really wrong and immoral in my view.